The stakes might not seem that high for Notre Dame's home opener against Northern Illinois, but a dominant performance could say a lot about the direction of this team and their chances of finishing undefeated. That's next on Locked On Irish.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's up? And welcome to Locked On Irish. I'm your host, Tyler Wojciak. I'm a Notre Dame grad and producer at Fox Sports, and it is great to have you here on Thursday, September 5th, and thanks for making this your first listen of the day. You can listen to the show wherever you get your podcasts, and you can watch the full thing on YouTube as well. Please remember to like this video and subscribe if you are watching on YouTube, or rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast if that is how you're tuning in today. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. Really excited about today's show. I had the chance to catch up with one of my favorite people on the Notre Dame beat, Tim O'Malley from Irish Illustrated, and we covered a lot. Tim and I are both on the same page about Notre Dame's game against Northern Illinois. We're both expecting a bit of a letdown performance, even though we both think the Irish are going to end up winning by double digits. Plus, we talked about the first impression this team made against Texas A&M, what they've got to clean up in the short term, and what they could look like at the end of the year. And we even wondered if Benjamin Morrison could go down as the best cornerback in Notre Dame history. This was a lot of fun. I hope you enjoy it. He is Tim O'Malley from Irish Illustrated. Tim, there's a lot I want to talk to you about today, but let's start with the game this weekend against Northern Illinois. I did this long opening monologue in yesterday's episode about why I'm not feeling all that great about this game, and I referenced your article about aftermath games, as you refer to them as, and as you explained, Notre Dame tends to have these letdown performances in week 2 after playing in a big primetime game in the season opener. That's the past. We're in the now. What are your expectations for the Irish this weekend?
Yeah, I know that, the past isn't always predictive of the future, but human nature is back in play. It happened in 2015 to a lesser extent because they had to travel to Virginia, but Notre Dame could not have looked better, beating Texas 38-3, 16.5-point favorite out of Virginia. Of course, you need one of the most memorable miracles in Notre Dame history to win. 2018, my favorite line in the history of interviews, Julian Love sums it up 2 days later when they beat Ball State 24-16. All right, man, let's face it. We overlooked Ball State. That was fantastic. I could see Michael Birch, the media relations director, kind of cringing and then accepting the fact that he had just said those words. 2021, Toledo escaped by the skin of their teeth, and with the kneel down, they would have probably lost that game. 2022, we know what happened with Marshall. It is a tough situation to bounce back. All those games, Texas, Florida State, especially Ohio State and Texas A&M, the entire offseason was geared to those games. It is just human nature to come down a little bit, and the MAC team, with little respect, but not a Tennessee State type team, right? It's not that situation that you're facing where you're just so badly overmatched, you're going to pull it out. I think you just always got to wonder about game number 2. The stats are skewed, as you saw, only 56% of the time in the last 60 years has Notre Dame won game number 2. That's not fair to this situation because that's a lot of Michigan, Michigan State, Penn State, Nebraska, and Purdue when they were good. But they've struggled in this situation. I don't expect them to lose. And people will say, well, this team's different. The 2018 team went undefeated. They were different too. It's human nature. I was watching Marcus Freeman and his assistant coaches on the field pregame. They do this every game. They do this every practice. They walk through the stretching lines. They high five, tap on the head, couple words, dap. These guys were fired up these coaches were fired up going through these lines, talking to people. The players were fired up. The energy is incredible. You just can't have it every week. But 28.5, I would take the points, but I do think Notre Dame is going to prevail in this game and probably won't need an onside kick like they did against Ball State.
Yeah, that's my point here. I don't think Notre Dame is in any danger of losing this game, but if there was a first half line, I would absolutely hammer Northern Illinois. It's not available on FanDuel. I looked it up just to see what it is. It's not even available. And, Notre Dame could end up covering, and it might be an ugly game. But I honestly feel like if Notre Dame does come out and dominate, I will be thoroughly impressed, even if it is against an overmatched MAC team, because I think this is an important game for them, even if it doesn't mean anything on the national level. I mean, unless, of course, they lose, because it shows that this team is focused and they prepare the right way. So what stakes are in play for a game like this for you?
Yeah, there's also a couple indicators. If you see Riley Leonard never running, he shouldn't run 12 times. But if you see Riley Leonard never running, you know he was coached not to run. You're only playing Northern Illinois. That's what happened with Wimbush and Ball State. If you see 5 new guys on kickoff number 2, I don't mean 5 new guys in the third quarter, 5 new guys on kickoff number 2, like you saw in 2018 and 2021. They're resting players for some reason. They have Purdue next week. That's a harder game on the road. You just got done with A&M. Howard Cross gave everything he had. Does he get to play the whole time? Riley Mills obviously was tired in that game, but how much do they play? There's indicators here. At stake is just play well. And I suppose don't have anybody saying, we have a surprise at halftime in South Bend. Notre Dame 17, Northern Illinois 9, something like that. You don't need that. I think for the growth of the team, the defense is going to continue to grow. They're very good. They're nationally top tier. You'd like to see Riley Leonard and his wide receivers get on the same page. Reviewing it for the film thing, the X things to say, I mean, it was clearly Jeremiah Love's fault on that corner route in the end zone where he didn't turn to the corner. I think if you just have Jaden Greathouse or Jaden Thomas there, if they turn to the corner, maybe it looks different. But I think Riley Leonard was a little bit off still. I think 11 months off does that to someone. So maybe what's at stake is Notre Dame's passing game becomes something where you're not making an excuse for it after the game.
Yeah, and I'll admit, part of my concern here has to do with the fact that the national media is already penciling in this team to run the table and make the playoff. I have been hurt by this team enough to know that it is way too early to assume anything. But is there something specific? Maybe it's multiple things. Maybe it's the passing game, like you just referenced, that you're hoping to see on the field that would make you feel more confident that, hey, this team really does have it all and they could go undefeated.
I mean, the defense is so good. I guess maybe a dedicated edge rusher like Boubacar Traore or RJ Oben not having that stat line that goes zeros all the way across after 31 snaps. Yeah. The secondary, I don't know how much more the secondary can grow other than if Leonard Moore comes in and Rod Hurd get the 2 picks this week. They're outstanding. The linebackers were better in game 1 than I thought they could be because the coaches probably saw busts. I didn't see obvious busts. They didn't result in anything. Defensively, I just think it's plug and play right now for Al Golden. They're going to keep getting better. Yeah, I guess the things they need to see, Riley Leonard passing, Bo Collins build on his performance. I'd like to see Jaden Greathouse separate because I've always thought he was going to be the main receiver this year. You'd like to see some of that. And maybe how they start integrating the other guys. This was not going to be, A&M was not going to be a big game for Jaden Harrison and Chris Mitchell in their first game situation, trusting the line to block, to throw deep to Chris Mitchell. It'd be great to see Chris Mitchell run away from someone, tunnel screen to Jaden Harrison where the blocks are executed and he makes moves. I guess it's really for me on the receivers and the quarterback, and goes without saying, but whenever you say that, you have to say it out loud anyway. The offensive line can't take a step back against Northern Illinois. Remember, they looked terrible against Toledo in 21. They were not a good line. They didn't look that great against Central Michigan and Tennessee State, and they were a good line. So you don't want to see the offensive line take a step back because they certainly have to play better than they did in A&M. That was grading on a curve. We won't be grading on a curve at Louisville.
Yeah, how much do you think Denbrock is going to change his offensive philosophy in this game? Because the offensive line is still developing, and it was clear during the A&M game that they were going to do everything that they could to help out their offensive line. Riley Leonard was getting the snap, getting rid of it right away. And I remember back in 2022 against Marshall, I made the point yesterday that for all the conservative nature that Notre Dame had in that first game, they went away from that in the second game. They really pushed the ball downfield, and they just could not convert. I still have flashbacks to Braden Lenzy running wide open down the seam at the very end of the first half. If he makes that catch, who knows how different Notre Dame football is. But they really tried to force it. Notre Dame could try to test it a little bit, obviously, this weekend going up against Northern Illinois, but it's a different offensive coordinator, different team. How much do you think they're going to change?
I think it's a great question. I hope not a ton. I think he's stayed true to himself other than more deep shots because you have more time. I think you could probably start to trust Knapp because there's no Nick Scorton. The Shermar line is not there pounding against you for 60 snaps. The speed of A&M, they're still a quality, fast defense. When you look back and watch the game, I think it was the tunnel screen to Jaden Harrison. You just thought, wow, that's a fast defense going after him. There were no angles for some of these guys. So I'd like to just think that they're building. Denbrock warned us all, and then he doubled down on his warning. We're going to be better as the season progresses. I hope we're judged on that. And That's exactly what a coach should say and feel. Definitely, it's just the wrong sport for that when you're Notre Dame because you couldn't lose that one game, and now they didn't. So now we can all take him at his word. They can just keep getting slightly better from there.
The more and more he said that during the preseason, I was like, is he basically preparing us for a loss? Because he's almost like apologizing in advance. Now, clearly they won and the game was very important to them, but I do think that it's going to change a lot by season's end. Like that Notre Dame USC game, who knows what both of those teams are going to look like. Where do you think Notre Dame needs to make the biggest improvement on offense in the short term? So let's just say like by the end of September.
Yeah, so heading into the Louisville game, maybe the first 4 games, I'd like to see the wide receivers be what I thought they could be. I think it's more Leonard and the receivers synergy than either's talent. I think Riley Leonard will. I mean, I look at the Pro Football Focus numbers, and last year, obviously, he threw the ball down the field terribly in a truncated season. You can't go 4 for 21 you can barely try to go 4 for 21 throwing the ball down the field over 20 yards. But he was very good. 10 touchdowns, 37 yards of completion, under 50%, of course, the year prior in 2022. But that is what happens.
Yeah,
he was throwing to
it's
Duke's
not
players.
A high percentage pass.
Exactly. He's throwing to Duke's players against Clemson and Miami, and they didn't play Notre Dame that year, but Florida State teams like that. It's not an easy situation for Leonard. Right now, I think Leonard should be humming maybe at the end of the Purdue game. You could hope to see Riley Leonard in the second half against Purdue. Jaden Greathouse just made his 7th catch for 97 yards, and Bo Collins had 82 yards and a touchdown. And then you think, all right, because we all have faith in Love and Price, as long as the line is blocking, to execute as the season progresses. I know Price had more yards on one carry than did for the game last week. I don't think that's happening again. That would be a bad sign, though, if you see as many run stuffs against Northern Illinois as you did Texas A&M.
I agree. And something I considered going into that Texas A&M game was there was a chance that coming out of it, we were all going to be talking about the offensive line in a way like, okay, that was the group to start the season. It could change. Do you feel like Notre Dame is going to stick with this unit? Do you have confidence that, barring injury, this is the 5 we're going to see the rest of the way?
Yeah, I do. Otherwise, I think the change would have been Coogan or Spindler in game 1 for Pendleton. But I mean, we've said this a few times on our Irish Illustrated podcast. Pendleton went out and beat an established starter and an established backup. Anthony Knapp is going to be a very good player, and he could have a very good player this year, but he didn't beat out someone established. So I was always more impressed with the Pendleton situation. I think it would be really weird if they changed now. I saw something on our message board saying don't expect to see the same line, and I didn't even address it because unless someone knows about an injury that I haven't heard about, then I don't know. I think that'd be self-defeating. I don't know why that would happen. You don't need to throw guys a bone if they're like Pat Coogan and Rocco Spindler, if they're bought in. They're Tosh Baker. If he wasn't bought into being on the Notre Dame football team, he would have transferred in the offseason because it seems like he lost the job prior.
Yeah. If there's going to be a change, it would have to be at left guard. Like there's literally no other option. And I mean, yes, Pendleton definitely got beat on a few plays. I was actually surprised at how well Knapp played compared to Pendleton. If you look at the PFF grades, we all know they are far from perfect. Knapp had the second highest grade of any offensive lineman. Pendleton had the worst. But that being said, I wouldn't swap Pendleton after just one game. That's pretty unfair to him.
Yeah, I agree. The Coogan thing is interesting. I mean, he can't only be groomed as the backup center, but they certainly had to groom a backup center for this season because he's one snap away from becoming an 11-game starter. Pat Coogan for Notre Dame at center. There's really nobody else. As we know, Pendleton tried and it didn't really take. I would be surprised if Pat Coogan starts. I think he would have started against Texas A&M. And I don't think they're going to look at 160 snap sample size for Pendleton and say that's not good enough.
Okay, where do you think we'll see the biggest change by season's end? Because it seems like we're in agreement on the offensive line. Personally, I think that wide receiver rotation is probably going to tighten up a little bit as the season goes along. I think some guys are going to separate themselves, which hopefully will lead to a more effective passing game. But do you think that's going to be a schematic change? What do you think we're going to see when Notre Dame plays USC?
It's a great question. If Mitchell Evans isn't back healthy, I bet there is a bit of a schematic change. If he is back healthy and plays the rest of the year, I mean, Denbrock he's not going 4 wide and a running back without Mitchell Evans if he's healthy. Now, I think Denbrock has more tight end love in him than anybody gives him credit for. It's just that LSU, he had phenomenal receivers and a quarterback that made it run that way. I think Riley Leonard benefits from having a second tight end on the field every once in a while. We all like Cooper Flanagan. I like him a lot more as the number 2 tight end. We all like Eli Raridon. I'd like to see him reward our liking. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I think it's time for Eli Raridon to step up a little bit.
I was a little disappointed he didn't do anything in that A&M game.
Yeah, and he had some issues on it was Riley Leonard's 3rd and 1 that set up the 4th and 1 where he got stopped, or except the 4th one that he got. I'd like to see the integration of. We barely got to see any red zone offense in that game. All I remember is Leonard's 2 passes that he was being very careful with the second one, obviously. I think I said he might have had Mitchell Evans on the Dwight Clark play going across the back of the end zone there.
Yep, he did.
Yeah.
At least from my vantage point.
Yeah, from mine as well. And I thought on the replay as well. So I think red zone is probably the way we judge them going forward. You would not expect – look, we all expected field goals in that game, which 23-16 was my pick. 23-14, 23-13 was what a lot of people decided. I mean, it was the final score. If you're thinking they were going to score 5 touchdowns, you just weren't listening probably to Denbrock. And also just reality. A&M's best units the front, Notre Dame's best units of the defense, the front and the back. That's not – Connor Wegman he could be a good NFL player. You didn't see it.
I doubt it.
I do too now. Holy cow. He was 50th on a preseason draft board. That is
24th on Dane Brugler's.
24th, and he knows what he's doing, Dane Brugler, too.
I know. I like the beast is like an automatic read for me in April.
After that game, he was the 50th quarterback on the draft board. So something's going to have to change for them as well. But hey, you got to root for A&M a little bit, right?
Oh, absolutely. I hope Wigman figures it out, and I hope he doesn't become exactly what happened to Phil Dracovic when at one point in time he was listed on first-round mocks. But considering we talked about this team and even the matchup against Texas A&M seemingly every single day for 8 months straight, it's hard to be surprised about pretty much anything. But was there something that happened in that game that you definitely did not see coming?
I got to think. This is the best I've ever done on a prediction, I think, in a game. Just literally saying more punts than touchdowns. Notre Dame's secondary will be the difference because both defensive fronts are going to win. Running game will get going, and that'll win it for them. Don't expect Riley Leonard to pass that well. It was all there. I guess the biggest surprise, the linebackers didn't have any busts that I can think of. They rotated those linebackers. Jack Kaiser played well, but it seemed like if Jack Kaiser wasn't in there, it was okay. I thought they would be able to target Osbury, Snead, especially with his aggressiveness, Drake Bowen a little bit more in the passing game. Maybe they should have been able to do that. Maybe Wegman couldn't pull it off, but you got that secondary behind you, man, and that pass rush, or not the pass rush, but that just stout front. It helps the linebackers a lot, but I used to make fun of everybody when J.D. Bertrand and Maris Leofau were drafted and they're going to play for their NFL teams this year. Their linebackers might be better by the end of this year. They look so good in the first game. That's probably my biggest surprise.
I remember thinking, what is Jaden Osbury's role going to be on this team? Like, where does he fit? And he only played 17 snaps, but damn, was he – those were allowed 17. Yeah, he was everywhere when he was out there on the field. And that's one of the things I'm most excited to see this weekend against Northern Illinois is, like, how are these snap counts going to be distributed, specifically at linebacker the rest of the way? Tim will be right back here with us in a second to debate, is Benjamin Morrison going to go down as the best cornerback in Notre Dame history? But before we get to that, I want to tell you about an awesome new promotion courtesy of our friends at FanDuel. You've heard me talk a lot about America's #1 sportsbook, and now we have something a little different for you. So now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with the YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out of market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. I honestly cannot recommend this enough. I have had YouTube TV for years now. It is by far the best option. It's great, affordable, and this Sunday ticket option makes it even better. Like, what's better than watching your favorite team win on every Sunday? Being able to watch all the other games going on so you can check in on your fantasy team and make sure that they're winning too. Football season is so close. It's already started in college. NFL starts up this week. I am so excited, and FanDuel allows you to get in on the action like never before. Just visit FanDuel.com to download America's #1 sportsbook. I want to throw something at you. I need your historian perspective on this. I know about Todd Light. I know about Bobby Taylor, so don't get mad at me. Just call me young. Benjamin Morrison is going to go down as the best cornerback in school history. Am I wrong?
So I know about Todd Light and Bobby Taylor too. Bobby Taylor Benjamin Morrison's going to leave early. So if Lou Emoji, God rest his soul, were alive, or Tim Priest were on this, they would let you know that Luther Bradley is actually the best cornerback in Notre Dame history. But let's go past that one. Todd Light, 2-time All-American, national champion, 3-year starter.
He also had like
Combo man.
8 picks in 89.
8 picks in 89. He was kind of alone in 90 as well.
Hear me out though. Let me make the case for Benjamin Morrison though.
He's awesome.
He's awesome.
Benjamin Morrison. Yeah.
What Al Golden asked him to do is a ton. And if you look at how the game is played now and the emphasis on the passing game, the quality of receivers, it's like comparing eras in basketball. It's probably not fair, but like that game just solidified it for me. I was kind of thinking about it in the summer. And then it's the plays that he doesn't make where the ball isn't thrown his way, where you just watch him and you're like, dude, how does anyone get open on him when he is just so, like, his technique is perfect. He's got the length, the athleticism, everything like that. So I think by the end of the season, that's kind of the conversation we're going to have about him.
I don't mind the conversation because he's better than both of them as a freshman, even better than Bobby Taylor as a freshman. Now, Taylor's 93 season, so his sophomore season, they were putting him on the best wide receiver one-on-one, and he was taking them all out of the game. He actually was injured in that Boston College game, and it showed he got beat. And by the way, Bobby Taylor was in the press box on Saturday. Looks like he can still play. So.
The shaking press box that apparently was a safety. It's a constant earthquake.
Yeah, you're right though. Morris has a lot more going on than Todd Light ever did at corner playing off coverage out there. But Todd Light was a killer too. So you got there's a lot of good. It's funny because we can name like 5 great ones, and there's like these 10-year gaps where there's nobody whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, Julian Love isn't. I don't think anyone's going to confuse him for like the best ever, but he was up there, man. He was really special, especially in the 2018 season.
He's the most productive for sure.
And his loss was certainly felt in Dallas.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, we know the difference he made, right? Value over replacement player was 1,000.
Honestly, I'm not saying that this is the best secondary in Notre Dame history, but if you look at the entire secondary and you think about the potential for Gray and Schuler, finish the sentence. It's the best Notre Dame secondary since blank.
Since the statistics were kept for pass efficiency, because these guys aren't going to get challenged by their quarterbacks and wide receivers on the schedule. They do not have C.J. Stroud. They do not have Caleb Williams. They do not have a Trevor Lawrence. Who's next? Louisville, because Brom's a wonderful
Tyler
coach.
Shuck, yeah,
but Brom's such a good coach with his scheme. He can get you. But I mean, this is the worst selection of quarterbacks in a long time.
Yeah, it's not great, but I'm not going to say anything negative about Tyler Shuck because I still think about last year before the Louisville game when Priester was like, Jack Plummer stays. And
we
then he
talked
beat
about this.
Notre Dame.
I don't know why this came up. I guess we were talking about this same subject coming off the elevator out of the stadium, and John Bryce goes, "We can't say anything, Jake Plummer." It's like, that's true. It's over. We can't rip on a quarterback. But look, C.J. Stroud, Caleb Williams, and at that time, Clemson, we thought, Clemson's going to have a quarterback. They didn't. But that season, when Cade Klubnik replaced DJ, you imagine beginning with C.J. Stroud and ending with Caleb Williams? Connor Wegman?
Yeah. And even then, like, Caleb Williams obviously got the better of Notre Dame's defense in that game, and Stroud certainly made some plays. But, like, considering that was Al Golden's first year as defensive coordinator, those game, specifically the Ohio State game, like,
Caleb was great. But
Caleb was great, and Cam Hart and Trick Bracey didn't play in that game.
That's a very good point. And he was also great because he ran around and looked like he had a force field on him to make those throws, too.
That USC game, I mean, it seems so far away, but it's like, is that really going to be the next time we see, like, that Notre Dame defense be tested, specifically the secondary? I mean, Lincoln Riley's going to figure out a little bit after what happened last year. That was an embarrassment, but who knows? We'll have to wait and see. But one of the things that was a little bit surprising to me when I went back and rewatched, I didn't really feel this way live, but I honestly think the defensive line was the worst unit on the Notre Dame defense. I mean, Jordan Botelho played great. As a whole, they were fine. I mean, R.J. Oben's struggles were pretty noticeable. Riley Mills looked gas. I don't think Howard Cross looked fully healthy despite the sack that he made. What do you make of their performance? Is it something that you're like just going to continue monitoring, or do you think it's just a product of the circumstances?
So I would be completely with you, except we talked to Al Golden last night, and the underlying part of the question was he doesn't care as much about stopping the 4, 5, 6 yard run on occasion as he worries about what gives points up, and that's explosive plays. So he even said, he's like, look, they got some push. I'm not bringing an extra guy in if I don't feel I need to, if you're not going to score. So unless you're like we're grading those guys, how those three, I think you got to remove Botello from this because he was fantastic. If you're looking at how, let's say, Burnham, Oben, Mills, Heinisch, and Cross fared, you would have to really watch like gap integrity and stuff because I don't think ND was shooting linebackers enough, but they felt they needed to. What Drake Bowen did a couple times. He, of course, had the highlight reel. He got stood up one time. So I think sometimes when guys are getting caught up in the wash, it's like you can't stop absolutely everything. It's a very good point because they were the third best unit on the defense. There's no doubt about that. I mean, the safeties, not the third best, the fifth best, the safeties, the corners, the linebackers, the defensive ends, just because Botello was great. And then kind of the interior was getting a little bit less. There's a little less penetration there. I don't think that will continue. I think the healthier Howard Cross is and Riley Mills. Riley Mills looked gassed, and that could be so many different things. Like, was he sick? Did Riley Mills not hydrate properly? There's so many things that could get you when it's 110 degrees.
Yeah, it was 1,000,000 degrees. And I feel like we're nitpicking here a little bit. It's because, part of this has to do with our expectations for that unit are so high. Like the offensive line. Yeah, you could definitely use Rubio. It's like the offensive line, we're praising their performance because our expectations were so low. But the defensive line, you're like, okay, I honestly expected a little bit better. What did you think of the way that they utilized Howard Cross? Because there was a point in the first half where I legitimately thought he might be out for the rest of this game because he missed 2 drives completely.
I thought he must be hurt. I think they were probably resting him for the second half because he ended up playing 50 snaps, and a lot of it was in the second half. They must have been prudent thinking we need him fresh more than we need Donovan Heinisch fresh at the end of the game because Heinisch got a lot of run in there. When he got a sack, somebody from Notre Dame texted me very well into the program. Like, I thought, along the lines of, I thought he was hurt. I'm like, is he out there that much though? Yeah. Like, he's really not.
You can't be like, I told you so after he literally just sat out the 2 previous possessions entirely. Donovan Heinisch played way more than I expected. He played, well, all things considered, but I would have preferred Howard Cross, a fully healthy one.
Yeah. And Heinisch got better as the game went on too. So I think it was probably tactical. Would have been a good time to ask El Golden that, but they don't like to ever hint about injury situations either. But it's not injury situation when it's 100 degrees. It's like, were you specifically trying to save Cross to keep him fresh because you need him in the fourth quarter?
Yeah, and I think if you're in a place where Donovan Heinisch is basically third string and he can come out and play that well, like that shows you how good the depth is in that room, even if it could definitely be better. And I think once they get Rubio back, things will get better. Do you think that Howard Cross and or Mitchell Evans will play at all in this game on Saturday?
I assume Mitchell Evans is still just kind of worked his way back in. He was 10 third downs. He'll be all third downs. You would wonder if does he not yet trust his knee to plant and block? I'm sure he trusts it to run downfield and make plays. I think I saw him block once in the first quarter, maybe second quarter. I saw him kind of try to he successfully set the edge on a block. I think Cross must be okay. To play 50 snaps, I think Cross must be okay. Now he should play less because,
hopefully.
Well, this is why you get in trouble with Northern Illinois because Howard Cross is rotating out of the game, and all of a sudden Armel Mukum's first game, and you have Northern Illinois running up the gut for 25 yards. But I would assume you can start rotating Mukum in now. The whole Leonard Moore could play a little more because you could take Benjamin Morrison out for 5 plays, other than when maybe he gets dinged on the shoulder. Xavier Watts played every snap. You could see Rod Hurd playing that spot instead of kind of that dime role he plays. I think that rotation gets deeper, and that could help Howard Cross rest a little.
Did you get any information about what happened to Benjamin Morrison, why he went to the locker room during the
game? No,
game?
we didn't. And it seemed like it came after he missed that. He kind of went for a pick. I assume it wasn't his shoulder. He came running right back in, but it was a missed tackle. It was a missed tackle when he kind of went. I shouldn't call it a missed tackle. He went for the pick, didn't get it. He busted a guy loose. Is basically what happened. Yeah. But all of a sudden, I looked up and Leonard Moore was in. Isn't it funny? We heard so much good stuff about Leonard Moore. I was like, oh, cool, Leonard Moore's in. I want to see this. Benjamin Morrison's out. Oh, great.
Yeah, I don't want to see this anymore.
Suddenly, I don't want to see Leonard Moore right now.
Freeman did say that one player had to go get an IV. Maybe it was Morrison. I don't know. I don't want to speculate too much, but I thought it was interesting. Like I noticed that Leonard Moore was in, but it was so quick that I didn't really think that much of it until after the game. And then I saw on Twitter that Benjamin Morrison ran to the locker room. I was like, oh, that's interesting. But okay, so circling it back to the beginning, I think we're both on the same page. We're expecting a little bit of a letdown from Notre Dame. I don't expect the defense to give up much at all unless it's like a couple crazy trick plays, but I think a lot of it is going to have to do with the offense. So has your perspective on Riley Leonard changed at all after one game? And if so, like what did he do or maybe didn't do that makes you look at him differently?
No, I thought he'd struggle against Texas A&M as a passer. So I don't want to say that if we get together after Miami going into Louisville.
Yeah.
As I said, there should be no excuses for Riley Leonard against Northern Illinois, at Purdue even, and Miami of Ohio. I think it's just he should be hitting his stride, Miami of Ohio and Louisville. And I mean, that is a really good front. And he did have to what was it? The quickest it was 2.3 per snap.
I think it was less. Yeah, it's close.
Yeah, I think it's just not exactly his game. You can't really throw deep when you're doing that either.
His best asset was his elusiveness in the pocket. I said that there are two quarterbacks in the past 7 years who could have won that game for Notre Dame, and it's Riley Leonard and Ian Book because those are the two best at avoiding pressures that I've ever seen. Like Sam Hartman is not winning that game.
9 yards was huge when he would scramble. That was a giant scramble. I mean, that's you almost like if you're a Texas A&M fan by the middle of the third quarter, you're like, all right, how about we don't let him out of the pocket anymore and let's see if he's going to stand here and hit some digs on us. But it's easier said than done, of course, because he's quite an athlete when he gets out of there too.
Yeah, and for all the criticisms we might have about his passing game, on that last drive, he delivered a perfect ball to Jaden Greathouse on that out. That's an NFL throw on 3rd and 5 to keep the drive alive. And then perfectly placed ball to Bo Collins. Thank God they didn't throw that flag. And I remember telling the person sitting next to me just unbelievably stupid move.
That is Notre Dame not flagged for that in your lifetime watching a game either. It's
I know.
Like on the road in Texas for crying out loud.
The refs are pretty tough both ways. Like I remember seeing a bunch of people being like, "Oh, the refs were out against Notre Dame. The 4th and 1, they didn't give it to him." And I was like, the biggest call in the game went Notre Dame's way. So I don't know if we're really in a place right now to complain about the refs. But the fact that Riley Leonard led the team down the field on that drive is so impressive. I mean, I don't know about you. I would put that as like the 3rd loudest environment I've ever been in. I mean, they were playing Mo Bamba on the speakers when Notre Dame took the field. It was like, dude, I can't hear myself think. And they still went down the field and scored. How did that environment compare to some of the other greats that you've been to?
Yeah, I was trying to figure it out. It was just such an imposing place, too. I thought Leonard made the best comment. He's like, I looked up, I couldn't see the end of the top of the stadium, and you kind of can't. It's ridiculous. No. Georgia was an amazing environment. I think the only reason maybe Georgia was louder they were ahead and had more reasons to cheer. Yeah. I thought A&M, when they tied the game up at 13, was
loud.
I hate to say 3rd loudest. The craziest was, the craziest was Miami because something happened. I don't know. I can't even explain that. There was like
a hostility.
There was a violence and hostility in the air that turned into a party, and they were still violently partying when it was going on. It was a rough place to be. I didn't like that one.
Yeah, I don't think anyone liked that. My buddy Luke was like, it's the only time I feared for my life at a game. And it's like, I would hope it's not like top 3 most life-threatening games as a fan. But last question I have for you. So when I was doing some prep about Northern Illinois, I looked into their week 1 opponent, and boy, did I learn a lot about the Western Illinois Leathernecks, a 25-game losing streak.
That's impressive.
Most of which, if not all, were by double digits. And I think it's safe to say that they might be the worst football team ever assembled. I made the claim on Twitter that if we created a team of Notre Dame media types, we could score on the Leathernecks. What position are you playing? I suggested maybe quarterback. What position are you playing, and how would you fill out the lineup?
Well, actually, Driscoll plays quarterback because he played quarterback. So Driscoll could play quarterback. Yeah, I would play wide receiver.
Would not have been my guess, but okay.
No, exactly. He played quarterback. I would play wide receiver for sure.
Okay.
And then I guess it looked like Greg said he's what does he say? He was
going to be flanker. He's going to be flanker. We're bringing back like the 1980s offense.
So I guess I have to be split up if he's flanker then.
I want to see Priester like maybe he's safety lurking.
Yes.
No one's going to run across. No one's going to run across the middle on him.
Chuck Cecil kind of safety, where there's
borderline
illegal on every hit.
I literally spent an hour probably just reading about Western Illinois. Like, this can't be real. This can't be. Like, imagine you're like fresh out of college, you start a new job, and you're like, yeah, I played college football. And you're like, oh, like where? And then Western Illinois, and you start looking them up, and you're like, oh, I think you just keep that to yourself.
It doesn't start for the flag team at the company picnic, right?
Yeah. I think it would be more impressive if you just said, yeah, I played flag, like on an intramural team. And they'd be like, oh, nice. You're a champion. All right. Thanks so much, man. You can read all of Tim's work on irishillustrated.com, or you can listen to him on his podcast, Irish Illustrated Insider. Also, you got Irish Illustrated Spotlight, Overtime. Am I missing anything?
Irish Illustrated Overtime comes in after the games now. There's a lot of it. I want to throw in, though, and God rest his soul, Bob Elliott, one of our favorite coaches. In 2015, they were out of linemen when they were playing Ohio State in the Fiesta Bowl. Matt Freeman and I were on the field, and he went up to Matt Freeman, tapped him on the chest, and said, "We'll two-gap you tonight." So Matt Freeman makes our team too. He's on the defense.
All right, man. Hey, I'm being honest. I think we're putting up some points, but I hope you have a nice, peaceful, relaxing Saturday. You can avoid all the skies falling takes if this game is close in the fourth. But I hope you enjoy it, man. It's gonna be a fun season.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Today's episode is also sponsored by LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs is the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. Speaking from my own experience, I know that whenever we're looking to make a new hire, we use LinkedIn to help find the perfect new team member, and it is so easy because they do the heavy lifting. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're literally looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. So what are you waiting for? Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. That's going to do it for today's episode. Thanks again for making Locked On Irish your first listen of the day. This is your last call for mailbag questions. We've got another Friday mailbag coming your way tomorrow. If you have a question, you want to submit yours, just drop them below in the YouTube comments or send them in on social media. You can send them in on Twitter at Locked On Irish or on Instagram at Locked On Irish Pod. Also, remember, please subscribe on YouTube or wherever you're listening to the podcast if you have not done so already. And for your second listen, check out the Locked On College Football Podcast with Spencer McLaughlin. And I'll see you guys tomorrow.